So I will answer this in maybe a few levels or parts, right? First of all, in the near term, right, if we see with the deployment of 5G, 5G advanced, I think focus is required on building new capabilities, right? Just not selling the advanced connectivity solutions like network slicing, etc., but taking it to the next level, like I mentioned during my presentation, that building a new layer of specialized services on top of connectivity services. But if I look this from a more longer term perspective, right, the real question is that how can we stimulate the enterprise interest in some of these technologies, right? I mean, one part is the supply side, right? That the technology is there. There is so many things you can do with it, right? But is there really a sound business case or a need from enterprises, right, to do it? And if we think more and more about it, I think the 5G experience tells us that the expectations are really divergent. If we look the expectations from operator side, right, probably operators will think, that as we move from 5G advanced to 6G, probably AI, ML will make the operations more cost effective. There will be, let's say, an easier or a smooth and cost effective way of migrating from 5G to 6G. But if you look expectations from enterprise side, right, probably they are looking for backward integration with technology, right? If for example, car, right, is fitted with some devices, right, and in 2030 we say, okay, forget 5G, it's 6G now. Is it really practical for them to really rip the devices that are already installed in the cars and they are going to change? Who is going to bear the cost, right? So backward integration with technology, more security, maybe easier deployment and manageability of these private networks. Those are the expectations that enterprises have. And when we think about this, I think the key thing for me is, as the industry is looking to evolve from 5G to 6G, there has to be greater collaboration, right? As part of these 6G R&D work programs, more and more collaboration with vertical industries to understand and address those issues which have really hindered the uptake or adoption of 5G technology. Unless we do that, I don't see a way how 6G will really, create a lot of innovation, drive a lot of innovation, or maybe, unprecedented value creation. So that's, I think, going to be key from a long-term perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. I think you raised a couple of very, very, very good points there. Yeah, first of all, vertical engagement, in building up 6G. So in 6G Industry Association, we have a vertical task force, which I'm chairing, and we have in place MOUs for the most important vertical associations. So we have a discussion on a day-by-day basis, and we try to gather what are the problems in adopting 5G. So try to avoid to make the same mistakes, if any, and try to gather the fundamental needs. What comes there is that, of course, nobody has a crystal ball, and nobody knows exactly what will happen in 2030. But by sure, we can at least share trends, basic trends in industry, and catch up on those trends. So this is something that we can do. I've been speaking to 5G AA, for instance, a couple of weeks ago. And they said, yeah, okay, but the mobile industry comes up with a new technology each 2-3 years. Then it's 5G, then it's 5G SA, then it's 5G Advanced, and 6G, but the car needs 5-6 years to be produced, and we cannot change the modem on board each 2-3 days, 2-3 years. So we must align our roadmap somehow, and we must stop to do promises. So this is, I think, this is something key for us. It's a lesson learned, trying to have a predictive roadmap, for next 10 years and stick on that. So that is absolutely, absolutely crucial. Okay. Let's go back a little bit to the to the project. So your projects. Yeah, do you want to add something, Janina?
Yeah, I would like to add to this comment that for the verticals, they invest into a new technology as soon as they really understand the benefit that they get from that. So one thing is kind of to make really clear what are the benefits provided by the by using 5G. So that's also something that we look at in our project in the development of the methodological assessment framework. So one of the benefits, for example, is kind of speeding up production of something. So if I can speed up the production, then I can make more revenue. Then I can kind of justify the investment into the technology, and that's directly linked also with the costs. So if we reduce the costs, it's easier to generate the revenue because we need to have less investment. So yeah, that's something I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you. Very, very interesting. Fair point, absolutely. But both of you, Alessandro, Janina, you have managed a lot of verticals in your projects. Do you think there is an optimal number of verticals to engage in a project? I mean, if there's too many, then the requests maybe are not current amongst them, or do you think that you should limit the verticals engaged in your project, or do you think the more the better? More verticals we have there, and the better it is. Do you have an idea about that? How to manage that in the future?
It's not a simple question. I would say that even if there are, at least talking about the experience that I actually having in TrialsNet, at the end, even if we have a quite heterogeneous type of vertical, at the end, it seems that from at least the technological point of view, the issues are most common from between them. So again, we are talking about the uplink and latency, etc. So from some extent, it doesn't, let's say, impact exactly the number of verticals because at the end, it is quite clear which could be the technology limitation. At the same time, of course, if you would like to enlarge, let's say the audience that could be really used the 5G, of course, we have to engage as much as possible verticals in our initiatives, exactly to make, let's say, the technology ramp up and be, let's say, actually deployed in real commercial services. So, I mean, you can see the issue from several perspectives. Of course, the much the better, but could also imply some issues in managing the project at the same time. And so, as usual, a trade-off and the good balance is the right way. And of course, with experience, we can definitely improve this.
Yeah. I can agree to that. For us in Target X, we currently have 4 verticals, so manufacturing, energy, construction, and automotive. And to be honest, adding one more would be quite a challenge. So I think there is kind of a maximum, perhaps. Not to say that it is 4, but I think what is the key point is kind of, do they have an overlap in needs and requirements? So do we have kind of several challenges to address? And something that we shouldn't overlook in this point is also the integration of efforts. So if we have multiple verticals, we do have multiple stakeholders, we do also have multiple test beds. And yeah, kind of, this kind of, yeah, enlarges the overhead and integration efforts.
Okay, Javier wants to add something?
Yes, because if you have the opportunity in Japan, I think Beyond 5G Consortium has published a very, very good paper. It's a report, it's a thick report, analyzing verticals. And I think what they have done is really worth looking at. And they have analyzed, I think, 25 verticals, and they have created sort of a 2x2 matrix in which they see what 5G and potentially beyond 5G technologies can do from a telecom point of view, the capabilities that can be offered, and also what each vertical sector is going to require in the short term and in the mid to long term. Also from the eyes of the vertical sector. By making the intersection of this 2x2 matrix, you can see what you can do with today's technology and what you can do with future technology, depending on what approach do you take. I think it's very, very interesting because usually the type of question that we receive from the verticals is, what is this from a marginal point of view, going to be for making for my own industry. And I think it's a very good analysis because not all the verticals, I think, are going to benefit equally. Some of them are going to benefit more. I have to say that I haven't seen any vertical really that we are not working out in Europe, but it's interesting to see the approach because they really have, I think, a very good pitch of what is in it for this vertical and why you need to consider 6G for this specific use case and 5G will not be able to make it. So if you have the opportunity, it's available, it's online. And it's
Yeah, very good. Javier, I think that is an idea to have a look at this document and see if there's some lesson learned also for us in Europe to take from this document. Okay, we're approaching 5 o'clock. Let's have the last two questions. One for Vivek. In this moment in GSMA, there's up and running an initiative called Open Gateway Initiative. It is basically an initiative which opens up network functionalities through APIs, and it is based on a roaming model like we had for smartphones that should work also for enterprise. Maybe can you say something more about this initiative, and do you think this is useful to grab more value in the enterprise sector?
Yes, so there's a lot of focus on open gateway at the moment. And in fact, there are a lot of operators who are already on board. Basically, they have signed and they're looking to implement and take the network capabilities to market using open gateway. And we certainly believe that it is going to open new revenue streams for operators. For example, one of the area, which is, I think the initial ones, is basically financial services organizations are looking to use these APIs in terms of how can they get access to the geolocation data and other data that's collected by the networks in order to facilitate the real-time or near real-time fraud detection, right? So we believe that there will be, as more and more operators really take this to market, more and more vertical sector organizations will come and they will find out new use cases to really make use of the data and the network capabilities to address specific areas within their own verticals. And API model is, I think, proven model, looking at the way many of the IT companies offer or expose their services to the developers and in turn generating a lot of revenue. So indeed, I think it is going to be a good initiative from a revenue generation standpoint.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, network APIs have been successfully adopted by a lot of Brazilian banks, for instance, for what you said, for an anti-fraud, for the SIM swap use case. And I think that API model should be also adopted with 6G when it comes, of course. I think it's a very good suggestions. So I would end up with Javier with the last question, and then leave the floor to the audience. Okay, Javier, you have been in Telefonica, you have been in GSMA, you are now in SNS journal taking in a driving seat, so you're kind of pioneer of the industry. You showed us this impressive figure about the digital economy opportunity in 2030. This huge $33 trillion opportunity, and now we have a lot of appetite to grab some value out of this. But how do you think that Europe can grab value out of this? We see that most of the companies are Americans in this moment. Do you have a personal opinion about that, of what Europe can do to enhance its footprint in digital economy?
Just a comment. I saw a report from Stanford that was connecting what they call techno-optimism. It's linked to AI, to the ability to capture growth. I think I mentioned it this morning. And the European countries are all at the bottom quartile of optimism when we look at this type of discussions. So I don't think the opportunity is massive. I mean, nothing is decided. So there are a lot of value that is going to be created. But I think we have to change the momentum in Europe to make it more positive. So, and I think we talk a lot about the problem, and obviously it is what it is, but let's start to talk about solutions also internally. So I think if we can just move a little bit the European countries in that ladder, because the countries that are more in the Asian side are at the top quartile. And I think there is a correlation. So it's not a minor thing. If you believe that things are going to improve and be better, you probably take more risks and do bets that are stronger. If you think that things are not going to look so good, probably you tend to be more conservative and try to, even the type of discussions that we are having, there are a lot of, in the substance, there is a lot of doubt or so I think it's let's see the bottle half full instead of half empty, and that would be, I think, the comment. And I think
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Optimism plays a really relevant part in that. A couple of days ago, somebody made a very good observation. I'd never thought about that, but they said, you know what? But in Europe, you don't have a NASDAQ. NASDAQ is, the index that in New York allows a lot of companies to get funded, startup companies in the technology world, and we don't have a NASDAQ in Europe, and that is also something which policymakers should reflect, that we don't have these funding capabilities for our startups. Okay, this is all. I would leave the floor to people in the room. Toon.
Yeah, a question. We've heard that the business is not in providing the core communication services, but more in everything else. Should there not be the difference from 5G to 6G also be not on the radio interface, which is the core communication, but on the network side, where we have providing AI as a service, providing compute as a service, providing joint communication and sensing as a service, localization as a service? Should we not focus much more on that? And the other question really is, do you see that the verticals would be interested in doing that kind of 6G research on joint communication sensing, on providing AI, etc.?
Okay.
So I can certainly address, I think, the first part of it. The second part is obviously for the pilots and trials. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on, right? If the operators and the broader mobile ecosystem has to generate a lot of revenue in the 5G and beyond era, right? It has to be, the operators and everyone has to be really thinking about providing AI services on top of it. That's what the whole point was, I think, of the presentation. Beyond connectivity, what can you really sell, right? For example, there could be an opportunity through network APIs, like I just mentioned, that expose the data which is already gathered by telecom operators, right? To enable new use cases. In fact, what we are seeing is that many of the operators in the Asia Pacific region, right, they're making huge investments, right, in terms of basically releasing, or at least at the moment, I think more in R&D, right, where they're focusing on investments in AI, what AI-led services like telco-specific LLMs, etc., they can really offer to other players and the ecosystem and verticals. So that's the way to go. But I think it will take time, because some of these services, as 6G is implemented, for example, some services around sensing, right? Whether sensing data can also be collected and monetized by operators, that will still take time, because 6G itself is like we're talking 2030, and probably services will be developed sometime, I think, post that only. But that's the way to go. That should be the thinking, I think, right from the beginning.
Yeah, I think the verticals will be very happy to adopt whatever brings them benefit. So if with service architecture, so service architectures are also discussed in verticals. So if there's a value proposition, I think that this would be interesting for the verticals as well. And also kind of for 6G, or for 5G, we already have the vision of a more automated, more seamless communication to really, and 6G, we hope to really then fulfill this and offer us these seamless experiences. And I think a service-based architecture can definitely contribute to that.
Okay, thank you. Very valuable comments. So we all hope that 5G will turn into 6G and service platform, of course, because this is all about beyond connectivity, I would say, and connectivity will be part of the business, but not the most relevant part. So this is, of course, a hype that we still have. Not sure if there are other comments in the room.
So very interesting discussions. Thanks for sharing your thoughts about these StreamD projects. I mean, which are part of the R&I program, the SNSJU. I was wondering. I mean, the public funding that is being put into those projects. What kind of, say, activities facilitate, in a sense? I mean, it's things that without that public funding would not have happened. I mean, by comparing, I mean, the approach in the EU with the approach in the US, right? For instance, I mean, it's mostly about companies, right? So running the show. Here, we're taking advantage of this, and I was wondering if it allows you to tackle some activities that otherwise possible, or doing things more, say, comprehensively, so larger number of trials. I mean, if you have a view on this.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think that, I mean, I'm following founded projects since a lot of time, but what I noticed in the last period, thanks to the founding, that let's say we were really able already to engage verticals inside the project. That was something that at the beginning was not the case. So of course, the founding helps also the collaboration between different entities that in other, let's say, situation maybe will collaborate just, let's say, to find a possible commercialization of solution, while here we can actually provide trials and try to understand if technology can be of help to the vertical. So I think that, I mean, this type of approach is really helpful, really to build a solid basis that, of course, should be exploited then for commercial services in a later stage. So the point is that the founding should not, let's say, finish with the project, but should continue afterwards with actual commercial services, deployment, etc., between the parties already present in the project, but of course, let's say, extending to other parties. So I think that what is important for the different projects is at the end of their activity really to, let's say, maybe organize workshop also to third parties external to the project, exactly to spread, let's say, the results towards the community and really enable, let's say, this founding have more, let's say, outcomes with respect to just results in the project.
Yeah, what I'd like to add is kind of that, especially what we see with this financial support for third-party projects, is, for example, in the TargetX project, we have 15 entities in a consortium, and we do have 98 entities that are funded through the FSDP projects. So in total, we are over 100 entities that are funded through this one project, and this kind of really nicely shows how, we can enlarge the ecosystem and bring in new players. So I think also without public funding, some testing also in verticals would take place. But I imagine it to be much more closed and not so much public available information, and also not so much access to SMEs, for example.
Other question from on your side, Carlos? I think we can wrap up. I will leave the floor to Costas for a short wrap up of this day. Costas is the project leader of SNSI's project, so that is organizing this event.
Yes, thank you so much, Rafael, and many thanks to all of you for coming here. I have the always fun task of trying to summarize everything we discussed here today, which is not an easy thing to do. I've been taking notes and trying to sort of bring it to a higher abstraction level of what it is that we learned through today's event. And actually boiling down to it, I think we're more or less aligned, and it feels that we have common experiences coming either from the public side, the project side, private side operators, etc. So we started with a very interesting, let's say, I would say, problem definition from Javier and Vivek about where do we stand with regards to the digital economy and digital transformation and the position we would all like to see Europe in and the European stakeholders, and that there's so much more, hopefully, that we can do. And practically also strengthened by the statements from the operators that, yes, we see that just following this down the same path will not be enough in this case. And we need to recognize this and try to find alternative ways to approach it. Big discussion on the alternative ways, but this is why it's always fun to be in such events. And then we heard from two of the projects leading this, and I actually kept, you both said something very interesting and striking to me. So Janina, you mentioned that, for instance, a lot of the SMEs and experimenters you experimented with, it was their first contact with 5G, right? And we keep saying that we need to develop solutions that are working for the industry and not coming just from the technological push. And that's exactly what we need to be doing. And it seems that we're early on in 6G. Perhaps we should have done it a little bit earlier in 5G, but it feels like progress. And Alessandro, on the same wavelength, you mentioned that with a lot of the experimenters you had contact with, the first challenge was to define a common terminology, basically find the common language that you could speak. So it's that even we have such a big gap, it's very hard to start working together. So these are already very important steps that thankfully it seems that from the SNSJU at least we're really taking very seriously now, and we try to reach out to this community. This message was then further strengthened also by our esteemed guest from Japan, and you also used the term that I really like social implementation of 6G. So not just trying to push 6G down the throat of some people, but really listening and working with them to see what we can do. I mean, we've already discussed this in 5G era, but it feels like we're taking it a little bit more seriously this time, and it's like a global concern that everybody seems to be sharing. And again, we heard that from the other international speakers, and especially with this data, let's say, tsunami that we're expecting, as you very well put it, Javier. It's very interesting because even things that we consider potentially resolved by 5G, we haven't really seen the full expansion of this use case and the scalability levels that we need to reach in order to serve them. So bottom line, we all come from potentially different backgrounds, but it feels that there's a very clear message now that we cannot be working at this purely from a technology pool side, purely listening to engineers, but really involving the community, the SMEs, really looking forward to what each of the use cases have to offer. And at least events like this are indeed, hopefully, a small stone in this big wall that we need to build to listen to each other and try to push in this direction. So with that respect, I think today we've heard from our international colleagues, we've heard from different vertical industries, from the public side and from the operators. So personally, I'm very happy because this is exactly what SNS ICE is trying to do, is unite these voices, try to get an understanding of everybody and sit down at the same table. We still have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm confident we can get there and make this more of an even better success story. So that's it from me. Thanks so much to Rafaela and Carles for organizing this, and to our colleagues for joining, and a big applause to all of you, I would say.
So once again, many thanks to all of you. It was really a pleasure to chair this co-creation event. So hope you also had some good time here with us. And with this, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I want to, of course, thank all the panelists to be here and to speak. A very, very special thank from my part to Mr. Kazaki, who came from Japan to share his experience for us. He's really coming from the other part of the world. So really, really a special thank you for that. And thank you for people connecting from US and from Japan, from other time zones. So leaving time from their sleep to witness what they're doing there. And so thank you all, and see you next year here in Riga.
Have a good evening.
Recording stopped.